some internet issues. Andrew was having some internet issues when we first logged on, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. My name is Laura Akgerman. I am the Disability Services Coordinator for OSU Extension and a program called Ohio AgrAbility, which I will tell you about in just a minute. If you may be able to see that the captions have been enabled, it should be in a little bar probably across the top of your screen. If you like the closed captions, they're great. If you don't, you should be able to hide them. I think they're actually some very high quality captions, but Andrew, are you back? Okay, anyway, so this is Gardening Across the Lifespan. Like I said, I'm Laura Akgerman with Ohio AgrAbility and OSU Extension out of the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences, and welcome to the webinar. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Ohio AgrAbility. Our mission is to promote success in agriculture for Ohio's farmers and farm families who are coping with disability or a long-term health condition. We provide education and resources to farmers, agricultural businesses and groups, healthcare, education and disability professionals, community members, and anyone who's interested in making farming safe and accessible, and also gardening. Our website is AgrAbility. It's AGR ability, ABILITY.osu.edu. And we'd like to thank Kendall at Granville for sponsoring. Actually, I think that might be the wrong note, so never mind. So a disclaimer I'm going to give right here is my expertise. I am a disability services professional. I am a certified rehabilitation counselor, which means that I work with people with disabilities to keep them working, whether it's a new job, changing jobs, restructuring a job so that they can continue doing it. That's my profession. I am in no way a medical professional and in no way an allied medical. So I'm not a physical or occupational therapist, no sort of a doctor or nurse. So please, if I recommend something, stretching, etc., that your doctor has said don't do, then please don't listen to me, listen to them. I also will talk tonight a lot about tools and equipment, your garden infrastructure. I understand that most of us are not able to just replace everything, just completely tear down the garden and start all over again. So I want to acknowledge that up front. A lot of what we're going to talk tonight may seem like common sense to you, and it may be. And I hope that you get at least a few good ideas out of this. If not, I hope you get a lot of good ideas. But something that's common sense to you may surprise someone else and think, I never thought about it like that. So tonight I'm going to talk about what is ideal, again, up with the tools and the equipment of the garden infrastructure, and we're going to work with what's possible. So first, I want to remind you to take care of yourself. Gardening is exercise, so don't let the dirt hurt is one of our stretches that is on our website, and I'll give you the website again at the end of it. And also, I can't remember, I may have sent Andrew some of these, but he'll be able to distribute those to you, or you can again go to look at our website. But it's a variety of stretches, shoulder shrugs, arms, twisting back, because gardening is exercise, and there's so much stooping and kneeling and lifting and bending and carrying involved that we really want to make sure you're warmed up for it. We also have a series called Fitness for Farm Life. That is body mechanics, safe lifting, getting an echo, body mechanics, safe lifting, exercises and stretches, and health, wellness, and pain management. Those also are available on the website under the resources tab, which I'll share with you later. So some good habits we want to have. We all want to have good habits. One thing with gardening is you may not be thinking about what your energy, your strength, your pain levels, but those are really good things. Again, going back to it is exercise and it's hard work. So listen to your body and your pain and your energy level. If you're in pain, please stop doing it. Sit down, take a break, or if it's hurting you because you're bending over, stand up, go sit down, do some other kind of work. I have here work during the coolest time of the day. I am in Central Ohio, a suburb of Columbus, and it was supposedly mid-60s today, but it was so overcast. felt much cooler. I think that this weekend it might get down to 30 degrees. So this time of the year, you're not thinking about how hot it is, but in just a few months, hopefully not until August, but probably May or June, we're going to have some really hot days. So when you're working in the garden, I have a flower bed that kind of surrounds we have a condo, surrounds our townhouse. So when I need to water, I have to go out the first thing. I walk and feed the dogs, and then I go out and spend about 30 or 40 minutes watering the flowers. And some days it's very pleasant, and some days it is already hot at 8 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning. It's already miserably hot. I've already got my sun hat on and I'm already sweating. But go out there and work during the coolest time of the day, whether that's the beginning of the day or the end of the day. I'd also like to point out that certain medications can cause sensitivity to heat, to sun, can make you get dehydrated. I had a client at a past job that when she sat out in the sun, she would break out in a rash, which was terrible because she was a bus rider and her bus stop didn't have a cover on it. So she just had to be really careful with the long sleeves, but just be aware of any kind of changes in your body that a medication might cause. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. That's a good idea, whether you're on medications or not, no matter how hot or cold it is. But the hotter it is, the more water we need to drink, as is the more water our plants need to drink. And again, stretch and warm up before gardening because it is hard work. It's very labor intensive. And so treat it as exercise. Great exercise, but treat it as such. So I want to talk briefly about preventing secondary injury. Secondary injury is when you're trying to save what hurts by working harder with the other arm, leg, shoulder. So if my left arm hurts because, I don't know, I overdid it, I'm a knitter and make jewelry. So sometimes I do overdo it. I'm working too much or sitting in an odd position. So instead of just letting that arm rest, I might be trying to take up the slack with my other arm or my leg or my hip or my shoulder, knees, whatever it is. But when you're saving that thing, kind of working in an unbalanced way, it can cause you injury to whatever you're trying to save and trying to help. Repetitive tasks can lead to injury. So pretty soon, again, in a couple months, there's going to be a lot of pruning to do, or maybe even a lot of deadheaded pinching. So think about that. When your hand starts to get tired, put down your pruners, stop deadheading, go do something else. If you want to keep gardening, then go sit somewhere where you can use a different tool, or maybe you can use your non-dominant hand to dig or to trowel or something. Pain is the body's warning sign. When gardening causes pain, you need to stop. And this is something that as I get older, I certainly notice that something that might have been painful before, just in the moment, doesn't bother me after that. It stays with me now, and I don't like being in pain. So when it causes you pain, please stop. Either stop altogether and just sit and relax and rest, go get a drink of water, or change tasks. If you've been reaching above your head a lot because you've got maybe an arbor or hanging baskets and your shoulders and your neck start to ache, do something where your shoulders and your arms are down and you can work in a different way. So safety, I've talked quite a bit about the sun. Protect yourself from the sun, wear a sun hat, sunscreen, sunglasses, long sleeves if you have sun sensitivity. Try to work in the shade or have some shade built into your garden if you can. Always have your phone with you. And I say that because when I do this presentation, I inevitably at this point start hearing from people who said, oh, my neighbor was just walking down the deck and the steps were wet because of the dew, and they slipped and they fell in the grass and they broke their leg or broke their arm or something and weren't able to get up. And of course their phone wasn't there. It was up on the deck with their coffee. They had just walked down the steps and they weren't able to call anybody. So make sure you have your phone with you or that someone's around, that if something happened, you could get help. Also, I want to remind you to wear hearing protection. Something with a good noise reduction rating. So some big headphones. I've got headphones on right now with a microphone because try to cut back on the background noise. But when you think about noise, and right now, for instance, I'm downstairs, I'm in my office, up in the living room, my husband's listening to television. I have 2 dogs that I hope are going to keep sleeping for the rest of this hour. But there's levels of noise, so I can hear. So you're hearing me. There's something else in the background. Maybe you can hear a TV in the other room. It's not just a single noise. My voice is not its own single set of noise. All of that layers on top of each other. So just imagine you're out in the garden, Wednesdays at noon. Today was Wednesday, and at noon today, the siren went off to test it. So that's one level of noise. If you're in the garden, you might be near the road, so you're hearing road noise. Maybe somebody's running a rototiller or a weed whacker or some other noise. All of that stacks on top of it, and it doesn't have to be a great cacophonous loud noise in order to cause hearing issues, but just keep that in mind. Put on some headphones. Not if it's pretty quiet where you are, but if there's some noise, put on some headphones and try to reserve your hearing as best possible. I'd mentioned a little bit with preventing slips, trips, and falls. Be aware of your environment. So again, right now, there's dew on the ground. I walk out with the dogs, and we have concrete steps to walk down, but I am very, very conscious of those when it's snowing and icy, because I've slipped on them a few times and pulled my leg pretty hard. So just be aware. And in the summer, there's grass, there's dew. You might have just cut the grass. That could be slippery. It could be muddy. Wearing the right shoes. So I wear sandals all the time. I will admit it. It's best if I wear something with an ankle strap that I can't step out of or slip out of. Tennis shoes are good, garden sloggers, boots. If you're going to be working around tools or animals, then you definitely should have boots on and not barefoot and sandals. Do not carry items when mounting or dismounting equipment. So I have a photo here of my supervisor's daughter. This is Cheyenne. She is getting onto a lawnmower, and there is no blade and blade cover on this lawnmower. So it's atypical for a lawnmower, but she's also demonstrating. So she has the lawnmowers facing us. The wheel is in the foreground. She's got her left hand on the wheel, her right hand on the back of the seat, and one foot up on the footrest. So that way she can walk up to it, put her hand here, hand on the wheel, hand on the seat, foot up there, and step through. So she'll step across and sit down. As she's moving, she'll obviously pick up her right hand, but keep her left hand on the wheel. And that's so she doesn't lose her balance. Cheyenne's probably mid-20s by now and probably has much better balance than I do, but still it can happen. You can lose your balance. It could be parked at a little bit of a tilt. When you're climbing in and out of your car, this is also a good one. Have one hand on the door or one hand on the armrest, because it's really easy to lose your balance or drop things, especially if you're carrying things. Lastly, don't carry things that obstruct your view. Don't be Bob. So I was doing this presentation last year, about this time of year, maybe a little bit later, and it was a garden club, and they all knew each other socially and went to the same church, and they were saying to the one, what happened to Bob? What happened to Bob? And I said, I got to know what happened to Bob. They had been cleaning out their garden, I think the week before, and they were cutting down some tall ornamental grass. And then he was going to haul it over to like the compost pile or wherever the trash, something. He's walking with a big armful of grass, and the grass is up and it's obstructing his view. So you probably know what happened. He was walking, the sidewalk was uneven. He caught his foot and just face planted on the grass. And he was really lucky that he didn't get a concussion, a broken nose, broken jaw, knockout teeth, broken arms. But he did apparently have quite a few bruises and some scrapes around on his face and his arms. And so I told his wife, I said, you may or may not want to tell Bob this, but from now on, he is part of my presentation. Don't be a Bob. Be careful. Make sure that you can see, and also make sure you're not looking at your phone when you're walking. I know I do it too, but pay attention. Look ahead, and also try to kind of look down at the ground. If you're just looking straight ahead, you're not going to see that obstruction that's in your path. I don't want you to trip and fall. So I'm going to go into some safe lifting. You may not think you lift that much, but when it comes up, you've got garden soil, you've got flats of plants, you've got seed, you've got buckets of water, all sorts of heavy things that you're using in your garden and around your house. I mean, you got an Amazon package delivery. We get dog food delivered from Chewy, and it's like 15, 20 pounds. It's pretty heavy. So when you're lifting, I want you to think about the safe lifting. You always hear lift with your legs, not with your back. So we're going to break that down a little bit. So safe lifting, you're going to approach whatever it is you're lifting. So let's say you've got a big bag of garden soil, potting soil that you're going to lift, and it's laying down flat, and it's kind of sticky and it's kind of wet because it always is. So your feet should be about shoulder width apart and head in a neutral position over your shoulders, which means it's not jutted forward and it's not pulled back. It's just if you're sitting comfortably, your head will be, there's a little bit of a curve in your neck, but your head will be there. That's your neutral position. Bend at your legs, not at your back. So crouch down. If you can crouch down, do that. You don't need to kneel, but crouch down and get close to the bag of soil that you're lifting. Use your stomach muscles and breathe out. That'll make you pull your stomach muscles in and it'll stabilize your back some. If you do it when you do you breathe in, it makes your stomach a little looser and it gives your back more opportunity to get twisted. Use the strongest part of your body, which is your legs, and then keep your load close and in line with your nose and toes. So I know that bag of soil, it's probably dusty. It's probably potentially got some bugs on it. It might be wet. And you don't want it right up against your clothes, but pull it up as close to you as you can and keep it in line with your nose and toes. So don't twist. You pick it up towards you. If you need to turn it to the right and set it on a shelf, turn your whole body to the right. Don't twist at your waist because that's a really easy way to wrench your back. Carry it to where you want to put it. Don't throw your back out with the load. So don't pick it up, carry it over to where it's going and just toss it. Again, a really good way to hurt yourself, or even worse, stand and toss it off to the side. That can really hurt your back that way. But again, keep in line with your nose and toes. And even if it's something that's not that big, it doesn't take a very heavy object to hurt your back. So whenever you're lifting or carrying or setting something down, keep it up close to you and keep your nose and toes in line. So we're going to talk about updating work habits to suit your ability, making more trips with smaller loads, whether you're using a cart or you're carrying it, you got a bag slung across your shoulder, whatever that is. More trips with smaller loads is less likely to injure yourself. Store tools and supplies in the garden if at all possible. We have, like I said, we have a condo and the flower bed wraps around and I keep all my tools in the garage. So I usually I have a little wagon that looks a lot like the green one at the bottom of this slide. I'll put all my things in there and pull it around. It's really not that far, but going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I just get lazy. So I would rather just put them in the wagon, take them out there and they're all there, and then I can throw them in and out of the wagon as needed and I don't leave anything in the yard. Minimize carrying heavy or awkward objects. I just talked about a bag of potting soil. Those are pretty heavy. They could be like 8 or 10 pounds, but they're very awkward, just that long oblong shape, and they're kind of not solid. They kind of waver back and forth. And then when possible, if you have one, use a cart, a wagon, or other hauling equipment to move supplies and tools. So I'm going to describe the wagon and the two wagons that I have on my slide here. The one on your right-hand side of the slide is a black wagon. It's called a Strongway. And I don't know, Andrew, if I shared the handouts with you, but on our website, I have a resources page, and then I have handouts and videos from webinars and
we'll make
workshop.
sure to link.
Thank you. But
Yeah.
I have it's a front and back page. A lot of the equipment and tools and things that I'm going to talk about are on there. I'm going to give a disclaimer and say again, I don't have any idea if you buy anything from anybody. Here in Central Ohio, Oakland Nursery is my local nursery. That's where I would go, or DeMonier's or Sambuca's. I would go to one of those before I would go to a big box store. But if you buy, and a lot of the things on my handout are from Amazon, which I love. But I put that on there as a reference for you. So when you're trying to remember what kind of wagon I was talking about or what kind of a tool, you could reference that. Take that to your local garden store, your local nursery, and see if they have those items. But on the right-hand side is that black wagon. It's called the Strong Way, and there's several things I like about it. I like it that it has great big wheels like a bicycle, because I think that gives you a lot more stability, and maybe it's easier to get in and out of the mud. It might make it more muddy because we're coming into mud season, but I like that. I really like that it's got a U-shaped legs, so they're not legs that are just pegs, just two separate legs. It's a U-shaped leg, so it's a lot easier to balance that and sit it down. You don't have to worry about as much of it getting unbalanced and tipping over. I grew up with horses, lots of stalls to clean out, and we had the old single wheel in the front, two-leg wheelbarrow, and too many times pushing it across the paddock that was muddy or, kind of uneven, and it would tip over and I'd have to scoop everything back in. So I really like those legs, and I really like the U-shaped handle that comes off of it. It gives you the opportunity to grip it on the sides, or to grip it with your hands out to the sides, gripping the handles on the sides, or to grip it in front of you. So that is, it's not a walker, but it's definitely something that could help with stability and balance. It balances itself very nicely. It also has at the end where the wheels are, that back wall actually lifts up, so it acts like a little dump truck. So if you had that bag of soil and you had opened it, you'd stored it on a shelf that's the same height as the bed of that wagon so that you could pull it straight across once you put it on there, open the bag, take it out to the garden, and pull that back wall up and either dump it or scoop it out as needed. So anything that saves you effort like that and saves you lifting is a great thing. That black wagon is also roughly 90 to 100 pounds, so it's pretty big. I have heard people that say they have one that's this or very similar, and they say it's extremely well balanced. But however, if you were going, it's also $150 or $200, so that is a big investment. I think that's a big investment. If you were going to buy something like that, can you store it? Do you have room to store it? I have a garage that has cars in it. I would not have room to store it. But also think about when you're at Oakland Nursery or wherever you're going, put all the things in there that you think you would haul out in one trip. You put out, maybe you'd have soil and some flats of plants and some tools. If you can comfortably maneuver it and push it and pull it, that's great. If it's a struggle right now, as we age, it will just get harder. So absolutely, if you want to buy it and just use it a couple of years and replace it, sure, I think it's expensive to do that, but I want to make sure, don't just go and try it out empty, because you're not going to use it empty. You're going to use it full of stuff. So that's something to think about. And if you can go bumping over the hoses and all the barriers that are at garden stores. On the bottom, we have a green wagon. It looks like a child's little red wagon. It has some pretty good sized plastic wheels. It has a nice bed. And if you can see it in the bed, it's got a potted plant, probably a couple pots, maybe some gloves, some other things. It has side pockets, and it has tools in the side pockets. And I don't know if you can tell or not, but they're actually, the corners are not attached. So there's openings because there is a shovel that has been tucked in between the bed and the side pockets. You can see the handle hanging out the right side of it and the blade on the left side of it. And it's also got a very long handle. I like that because you don't want something that's short handled that's going to make you crouch over to move it around. It's very lightweight. It also folds up. I have something similar. Ours has solid sides on it, but it's a great one, and it folds up flat. I can fit it in the back of my car. It works very well for us. The bigger one would not, just because of storage, but it's a good wagon. Something to think about if you're looking at wagons. So adapting how you garden, changing the way you work now to save yourself from secondary injury and habits that may cause pain and injury in the future. So we're just coming into growing season. Some of you might have started some plants inside or have forced some bulbs, but we haven't gotten into the hardcore, we're really going all the time gardening yet. So any little things that you can do to change it now that cause you less pain, that make it easier and give you a better time gardening, all for it. So updating work habits to suit your ability. Sit up. If you can sit down to garden, sit down to garden. Sit on a rolling work cart, a chair, or low seats. There's a picture here of a woman. She's trimming like a hedge or a bush. She's sitting on a rolling cart. That cart is on that garden tools handout that I mentioned. It has a cushioned seat, and it has a curved back that also has a cushion on it. You can see it comes up to just about her belt line. So it's not really going to support your upper back, but it's still a nice cushy seat. It has 4 good sized wheels, so I think it would have some good stability. It's got a basket on the front. It's got a tray under the seat. It's got tool loops around the outside of the seat so you could hang tools in it. So you could put a lot of things on that you can then access while you're working. And it's also got a good handle that you could, I believe that I think it's longer than it looks in that picture, but also you can sit on that. So let's say that that hedge she's working on is a really long one and she's going to work her way all the way down it. She can sit there and just grab that handle and use it like a rudder and just kind of crab walk, shuffle her feet over so she doesn't have to get up, move it, sit down, get up, move it, sit down, which made it, I mean, that's some good exercise, but that may be challenging. She can probably not get much lower than where she is right there. So it wouldn't be helpful. I mean, I guess you could sit on it and lean down to work in the ground, but then you're going to be straining your shoulders, neck, and back. So that's not ideal. But if she had raised beds, that would be very good for a raised bed also. Also, if you are kneeling, if you're good at kneeling, use a kneeling pad or a cushion instead of kneeling on the ground. That could really save your knees a lot. And in the next slide, I have a kneeling cushion to show you. Or if you need to sit, I'm not a kneeler. My knees hurt too much to kneel, but I will sit and work. It is sitting and facing it. I do have to lean forward. That eventually puts a strain on my back. I sometimes will sit sideways and reach out from the side to do what I need to do. But those are both options. And then have a plan for getting off the ground when you sit, kneel, or crouch. And that may sound silly, but again, sometimes you'll sit down and just go, oh my gosh, how am I get up? I thought I'd be able to get up easier than this. I thought I'd have a better time getting this. I can't get up. So either sit down next to something that you can use to pull yourself up on. So if you're sitting down next to a good sturdy bench, use that to pull or push up off the ground. Have someone around to help you with it. But before you sit down on the ground, make sure that you're going to be able to get back up. So updating work habits to suit your ability. I'd mentioned the kneeling bench. On the far right top picture, there's a woman wearing white pants and gardening. God bless her. I can barely wear a white shirt and drink coffee, and she's gardening in white pants, but she's sitting on a little bench, and it's got a cushion, and it's got they're kind of long rectangle handles on legs on either side. So that little bench, she can sit on it like she's doing. She can also flip it over and kneel on it. It's a couple inches off the ground then, but those legs that are now bench legs, when they flip over, those are tall handles that she can use to push herself up from a kneeling position. Make sure that you have the upper body strength. If you're going to do that, make sure that you can do that. Also, make sure you have some good balance, because I could see how pushing yourself up, you might want to lean forward too much, but just be aware of your balance. That's definitely something that we need to all be aware of. But it's a good little bench if you like to kneel or sit. There's also another picture. This is called a bucket stool. Both of this, the kneeling bench and the bucket stool, are on that garden handout, but it's a 5-gallon bucket, and then instead of a lid that would snap on, it's got a black lid with, I think it's 3 or 4 legs that give you like a several inch opening between the top of the lid and the inside of the bucket. So this bucket is full of green beans, and that is a huge number of green beans. I'm very impressed with that garden. So that's a lot of green beans. But you can sit on that. One thing that's nice about that is it gives an automatic stopping point. If you're picking that many green beans, once you fill it up, you got to stop and go empty it. So it's nice to have those built-in breaks. If you're weeding, if you're deadheading, whatever you're doing, when you're filling that bucket, when you get to a certain point, that's a good time to take a break. Or someone told me once it's a good time to have a glass of wine. I like that too. But that's a good bucket for that. Sit on that. Again, I would be careful with balance. You are sitting on top of a bucket, so just keep your feet braced, but it is a nice little thing. It'd be very lightweight to carry around. And then extended reach tools are some other things that are nice if it's hard for you to kneel down and you need to stand up or sit. A long handled tool, and it doesn't have to be the garden handout. I do have a set of long-handled tools that are pretty pricey, but it could just be a regular a regular hoe or rake or trowel that you're going to use from a seated or standing position that'll save you from kneeling or crouching over or bending. And so thinking about some adaptations for visual limitations, as we get older, we need glasses. Our vision gets less, especially I notice it at dusk. I would like to say at dawn, but I'm rarely up at dawn. But at dusk, when it's starting to get darker, especially in the summer, we have some really nice long days, but there kind of comes to a point where it's dark enough to be outside, but it's really kind of too dark to be working. So visual limitations as vision goes, or even full blindness or just low vision, partial blindness. Some things that you can do to adapt for that are, I have a photo here, and this is actually from the Buxton Inn in Granville, Ohio. It has a beautiful brick path. It's some beautiful trees with some potted plants at the beds. There's a pink brick path surrounding those. It's very squared off. It's very straight and angular and linear. It's got some gorgeous plants and pedestals and in planters. And then over on the far top right, you can kind of see a fountain, but it's a really great, it's also got twinkle lights wrapped around the trees. So at night, and there are solar lights that light up at night. So it lights the path up really nice. So solar lights, twinkle lights, anything that lights it up, doesn't have to be bright daylight, but lights it up so you can see where you're going. Could work later in the day because it is cooler at night usually. But having those straight, squared off paths are much easier for navigating it, whether it's just dark and you can't see it or your vision's not what it was. It's also nice to have that dark contrast between the bed and the brick in this place. And probably most of us do not have brick paths in our gardens. But one way you can get that, if you have a grass path and then you have dark brick, dark soil, there's a visual contrast. So you know I'm walking on the path versus I'm walking in the bed. And then using different levels for beds and walks. So bank up the beds so that if you're just walking and you're not looking or you can't see, you're walking on the path, it feels level, your foot goes up and starts to go up at an angle, you know you're walking in the bed, get out of the bed. That can also help with navigation. We want you to keep the paths clear of vines, hoses, tools, barriers, anything. And that's just good safety regardless of how well you see or not. And then using scent and sound landmarks. So if you have a garden set up and you know that in the, where you enter and then the upper high left of it is a fountain. And then over on the right-hand side, about midway down, you have some wind chimes. And then you've got maybe a little spinner that makes kind of a clicking noise over at another place. It's nice. That's a good way to orient yourself, especially if you can't see as well or in the dark, plus they're just lovely features. So going into some tools, I'm going to talk a lot about neutral hand position and poor hand position. So you can see on here a good hand and wrist position, a neutral stress-free position. So just think how you're sitting right now. If you're not holding anything and you're just sitting, you're probably sitting and your arm, either the back of your hand is facing the ceiling or possibly it's facing out to your sides. Your thumb is relaxed. There is a natural bend at your wrist where your hand meets your forearm. There's a natural bend right there. It's supposed to be like that. The poor one, when you think about, pretend that you're holding a rake or a shovel where you have to straighten your arms out, where you're straightening that forearm so the forearm and the thumb are in a straight line. I'm doing it with nothing in my hand right now, and I can feel the tension in my wrist versus just sitting in a neutral position. So I do recognize that there are some tools that you do have to be in that poor position where your hand is straightened out. I have a few solutions, but just be aware of it. Again, this is something that you would be switching tasks when you're holding the shovel or you're holding a rake or something for a while. Switch over to something else, use a different part of your body. So on the position here, we have on the diagram here, we have the good hand in the neutral stress-free position. That tool that they're holding, and again, I have tools that are very similar to that on that garden tools handout. it's like holding a joystick or like holding, let's say, a hammer. It goes up and down in your hand, and then the tool comes out from it either over the top or the bottom, depending on how you're using the tool. There's also a set on a 4-piece set on that garden handout, and it shows it's got a rake, a fork, like a little claw fork, a claw, a fork, and a trowel. And they have that kind of handle that's showing here with the vertical handle instead of the horizontal. And then it's got a cuff with a piece of metal. That metal inserts into the back of the base of that, the back of the base of the tool handle. So the metal bar would be parallel with the tool or with the blade of the trowel or the fork, and you slip your arm through that cuff, so it stabilizes it. So that way your arm and your wrist, your hand and your wrist are not doing the stabilizing of that tool. The cuff is doing it. You're still gripping it, but a lot of the work is being done by that bar and cuff. And you'll look at the handout and you'll know what I'm talking about. So the next one, we have another type of ergonomic handle. It is kind of shaped like I guess like a D, and it has a opening at the bottom, so you would slip a rake handle through it. So you can see pictures here on the before. You've got a person who is using a rake, a leaf rake, and they're leaning over. They've got the one arm, so they're right-handed. They've got the right arm stretched out. It's in that straight out position, and you can't see the left arm, but it's definitely up by their waist and holding it probably in the same hand position, which is not what we want. We've got this crooked spine. It's painful and just kind of makes my back hurt looking at it. The next one, when you're using these ergonomic handles, the handle goes on there, and then you're able to grip it attaches to the handle of the broom or the rake, and then you're able to just put your hand on top of that so that the back of your hand faces up to the sky, and you're holding it like that. And they didn't show it on this photo, but I would use 2 of these ergonomic handles, one for each hand on that rake, and it would make it much easier. You're standing upright, you're not straining your shoulders, your neck, your back to use this. And that's something for a long handled tool. I guess you could try down a short handled tool. I don't know if it'd be as useful, but they're maybe $10 or $12. They're on that garden tool handout again. So something to look at. Nope, not for visual limitation. Yeah. So more adaptions for visual limitations. In addition to setting up your garden so that it's easy to navigate, you want to plant easy to care for, fragrant, touchable plants. So maybe not something with thorns and prickly plants. I know roses are beautiful, but if it's something that's hard to see or they're going to scratch you, maybe they're not your friend. Wrap brightly colored tape or paint around tool handles so that they're easier to see on the ground. I have a couple of old trowels and forks that belonged to my grandmother, and so now they're dirt colored. The handle's dirt colored, the blade is dirt colored, and they're great tools, and I keep using them. But if I set them down in the dirt, it's really easy to lose them. Always put things away in the same place. So I have photos here of a like a claw fork and a trowel, and they have pipe insulation wrapped around them, and then I secured that with bright red duct tape because scarlet and gray is my favorite color combo. But they're very easy to see. So if you put them down in the garden, you'd see them. So adaptations for arthritis or weaker grip, we're all coming up on this. I have some arthritis myself. My hands are pretty good, but I'm definitely feeling it some days when I'm writing for a long time or gripping a tool. So using ergonomic pruners and tools, I have some pruners that have their Fiskars is the brand, and I know there's other brands here that either have ratcheting tools so that they take a lot less work to use, to squeeze. They do the work for you instead of just the old-fashioned chunk, those hard ones. I also have some ergonomic pruners. I have 2 pairs of pruners. One is just a regular handle, and the other one, when you squeeze it, so you got it braced with your thumb, when you're squeezing it with your fingers, the handle rolls. It rolls when you're squeezing it. So there's less, it's easier to squeeze. We'll just say that. The spring action design is nice. There's also ratcheting design that reduces the hand strain and makes them do the work for you. I love those lightweight hoses. I call them bungee hoses, but they're the collapsible hoses. They're extremely lightweight. I have several here, and I probably carry 50 to 75 feet of hose just hooked over my shoulder, and it's like carrying my purse, and my purse isn't that heavy, but it's nice and lightweight. I connect them onto the spigot. I love those lock open nozzles. I will admit that. So these here that I have pictured are not the ideal ones. If you can see, there's one on the far right. It's yellow with gray and black. It has a little loop, so you have to squeeze that trigger shut and then get the loop over it. I don't love that one. I have one that just has a big nozzle, and it has kind of a lever, so you can push the lever up with your thumb or the butt of your hand, and it'll just lock in place. And it has the twisting nozzle that you can have all different types of spray patterns. But I like those because if you're spending 5 minutes watering plants, that's one thing. It takes me 35 or 40 because I just soak them because they're in the sun all day, and having to squeeze that sprayer handle it's exhausting. So I think the first time I had to do that, I thought, oh, no. Went to Oakland and bought one of those much nicer nozzle that just locks open. Grippy gloves, those are gloves that there's a few different varieties, but those are ones that have a textured palm and fingers, sort of like a jar opener. So they give you just a little more, because I have just some garden gloves that have a little bit of that texture, but I've also got some of those grippy gloves that have a really good texture and really give you a good sticky kind of friction surface. So if you need to pick things up, and also helps with holding tools. Thick handled tools. The picture prior, I had that pipe insulation, and I think I have one coming up where I can talk about that a little bit more. But a thick handled tool, or one that has kind of some grooves for your fingers or a place for your thumb to rest, it can make a big difference rather than just a wooden heavy tool. And then replacing spigot wheel with lever handle. Someone caught me. I was at the garden show over the weekend, and they said, "Do I just put this on?" And I thought, that is a great question. That's a good question for your Ace Hardware. How do you replace that? I have one of the wheels for my garden spigot, and it's hard to use. I really like that lever. You could hit it with you could use your hand, you could hit it with the side of your hand, you could hit it with your elbow or your forearm to open and close it. So this is that 4-piece tool set I was talking about. So protecting your fingers, I've already talked about pruning, switching out from pruning, also pressing a squeeze trigger spray bottle, holding the hose nozzle open, using small pruning shears. These can all just cause damage to your tendons or joints, or just irritate them and make your hands really tired and make it hard to grip things. So I encourage you to switch from pruning to less hand-intensive work frequently, alternate which hand you use if you can, and then keeping hands and wrists in that neutral position instead of twisting the wrists like we had just talked about. And the picture here is that 4-piece tool set. So you can see the cuff and the bar, and then up in the smaller picture, they have that cuff around their arm and they're holding the handle, and they really are very comfortable to hold. I think it would take some getting used to because it's very different from just your standard where the handle and the tool are just in the same plane. But once you get used to it, I think it's really comfortable. And there I am again with my scarlet and gray tools. So some modified tools. These are tools that we have. They have a really great tools, but they have a really hard rubber handle. So your hand gets kind of fatigued and you have to grip it tighter. So one way that you could make a softer handle or make a larger handle so it's easier to grip, get a section of pipe insulation. I got a 6-foot piece at Ace Hardware. It's probably been several years ago, and it was maybe $253. And I got the largest diameter they sold, wrap that around the tool, and then I secure it with duct tape. Again, scarlet and gray is my thing, but you can get some bright colored duct tape and it really can pop and make it easier to find these things. So adapting your garden to fit your ability, we want to reduce the distance between the storage and the garden. So I think I'd mentioned that before, but if you have a garden shed, or if you have to carry things from the garage or the shed all the way to the garden, if it's a distance, try to reduce that distance or try to keep some things out there. So I've got a picture here. Bottom right corner is of a mailbox, and it's out in amongst some foliage. I was presenting this a few years ago and someone said that their neighbor has a very long driveway and they have to walk up it to go to the mailbox. And at the end of the driveway is their garden. So they put an old mailbox, not the one that they use to collect mail, but an old mailbox out there, and they store some hand tools and some spray and some things. So they walk out to get the mail, stop, do some gardening, do a little deadheading, what have you, put everything back in the mailbox, get the mail and go back. So they're not hauling. Because even if it's just some hand tools, you get out there and you think, oh, I forgot my hand tools and I'm not going to do it. But store them out there. Plus, I mean, it's very decorative, but it's a great way to put some small items out there. If you have more space or you want a bigger storage space, the left picture here is of a storage bench. The lid's up, but that is a seat, and then it's got a back and armrest on it. And if you can see in there, it's holding several seat cushions. It's got a big pot with some tools in it and some other things. So those are nice. It gives you a place to sit and a place to store your tools. I've also seen the big, I think they call them maybe boat lockers or pool lockers. It's kind of a, I don't know, 3 to 4 foot high chest that has doors that open up like French doors, and you can put a padlock on it. So depending on if you're putting things in there that are pricier that you want to be able to secure, you can get something that you could put a padlock on, but it's out there. This bench, that pool locker or boat locker, they're often sold, especially this time of year when we're starting to think about sitting on the patio, but they are available in that hard plastic that's all weather that you can just leave out there and not worry about them getting rained on like your nice rattan furniture. And the top picture on the right is where I'm saying keep paths level and lower no thresholds. So the top picture on the right is from Franklin Park Conservatory in Columbus, Ohio. If you haven't been there, oh, definitely. If you're in Central Ohio, go. It's a wonderful place. But that is when they're outdoor gardens, and I really like it because it's got a really nice smooth path. It's a light kind of tannish gray color. It's light. It's not a sidewalk. There's a little bit of very, very fine gravel. It's not dirt. I don't know what it is, but it's a great surface. I've been there after rain. It doesn't hold puddles. It's a great, or very small puddles. This one is trimmed out with brick. So again, you've got that contrast between the walkway and the bed, which gives you the visual appeal, but it also gives you that visual cue that walk on the path, don't walk on the bed. This one, actually, they have bricks that looks like diamond patterns or triangle patterns outlining different beds, but it's a nice smooth path. You can't probably see it, but up in the upper left corner of this picture is a grape arbor, and it is just glorious in the summer when it's really hot and it's all covered with all these vines. You just want to go and stand under there all day. It's so beautiful. And it also, I believe, maybe imagining this, but I believe they have some benches under there too, so that you can sit under there and enjoy the shade. But it's a great little section of the conservatory. And as I'd mentioned, benches and seating areas around the garden, especially if you can put them in shade, that's great because you want to sit out there, not just work in the garden, you want to enjoy the garden too. And also, again, using a cart or a scooter, so a cart to haul your things around, or if you have mobility issues, a scooter, wheelchair, something like that, that's a great way to get out into the garden. And that makes it even more important to have those smooth paths and no thresholds. Because with a threshold, if you're in a scooter or a wheelchair or maybe even a walker, even a couple inch threshold is a huge barrier. It's a trip hazard, and it's also hard to get over if you're on a mobility device. So protecting your feet. Wear comfortable and supportive shoes with good tread. I have a picture up here. They're called garden sloggers. I have some of these in blue. They're comfortable. They're not all day walking shoes, but I wear them to walk the dogs in the summer when the grass is wet or sticky, but they've got a great tread on them. They're rubber, so they can get wet. Don't leave tools or items on the ground that you could step on, you could trip, or you could bruise your feet. Again, so with a trip hazard, something that's in the way if you're trying to push your cart around, and if you have diabetes or neuropathy or limited feeling in your feet, please check your feet carefully for cuts, scrapes, or punctures after you garden or after you're outside. So if you can't feel it, you may not know you have injured yourself, and then that could turn into an infection or something worse. So those are something, again, we were talking about medications before. It's an unfortunate fact of aging. If we're lucky enough to get to age and age well and age for a long time, there's some things that aren't going to work quite as well. So I've been talking a lot about kneeling and about getting down to the ground. I personally do not kneel. I have not any of these beds, but I have a raised bed. So the picture, oh, went too far, sorry. Picture on the far left is actually my sister's raised bed. It's in her backyard, and I wish I had taken a picture. I did take a picture last year. She had these 10-foot sunflowers coming out of that bed. They were amazing. I will get a picture of those this year, but it's probably, I would say, 2.5 to 3 feet high. And it has a nice wide bench on either side. She's got a flower pot sitting on it, so she uses that for flower pots. She'll sit on it and do the gardening, tend into the garden. The picture in the center is from Franklin Park Conservatory, and that's my husband. He's standing at one of their raised beds. So they have a variety of raised beds. Those are probably about 3 feet square or 4 feet by 4 feet square. You can access those, and you can see my sister Diana's is in her backyard. That's grass. It's a pretty smooth garden, smart yard. In the center, he's standing at a raised bed. It's on a concrete slab, so there's no worry about the surface. You can get up right up to it in a wheelchair. So if you were using a wheelchair or a scooter, you can roll right up to it. There's enough space under it. It's a lot like sitting at a dining table. You could pull right up to it and reach into the garden. In the background in that center picture, you can see a tall structure. There's probably a 1 foot high raised bed, and they had some plants planted in that, some low plants, some flowers, and some taller. And then they had a structure that came up that was just a board up, a board across, and a board down. So just a rectangle, like a wall, but it has, I think they called it cattle panel. It wasn't chicken wire, but some kind of wire inside it so that sunflower and the vines could grow up it. So they were really taking advantage of that vertical space. So don't forget about the vertical. We think a lot about the horizontal space of the ground, but the vertical is great too, especially if it's hard for you to kneel down or you have a lot of vertical space. Grow up. And then the very last one on the right-hand side is up in Hardin County. Their master gardeners take care of this. It's called a veg trug, and it is on your garden handout. And it's got a V-shaped bed. I think part of that's for drainage, and it gives you access. Again, if you were at a wheelchair or mobility device, you can come right up to it, and there's not a I guess you call it an apron that comes down that would impede you getting up to it. If you can see on there on the right-hand side, it stands over gravel for drainage, and then on the left side there's a sidewalk. So if you were using a mobility device, you'd probably want to use the sidewalk side. Raised bed should be 2.5 to 3 feet high with leg room and a depth of 2 to 3 feet. You should be able to reach the back or the middle of the bed while you're seated or standing. So when you're setting these up, all 3 of these examples I've shown you, you can access from all sides. But if my sister's bed was up against her fence, she wouldn't want to plant any deeper in that she can comfortably reach. I mean, she could certainly lean over and reach all the way into the middle of that, but that would get really uncomfortable fast. So think about that. I did this presentation over the weekend, and someone said that he had a bad shoulder, and he'd had raised beds built. And so he had some that were built that were a 30-inch depth, and he had some others that were more like that's where he said 48-inch depth, 4 feet. But he was able to reach comfortably into the middle of the 30-inch bed. But the people that worked with him could lean over, reach further in, or maybe access it from both sides. But that's something you want to think about if you're building or buying one of these. Make sure you set it somewhere that you can reach it comfortably. So container gardening, on the far left side, I have a flower window box. It's got some strawberries in it. I have those on our back patio. Those are great. I put herbs in them. In the center is one of my favorite pictures. It's like a closet shoe bag, what you would use in the closet to hang over the door to put your shoes in. And this one has, I think it's actually 2 hung next to each other, but it holds, 48 different plants in those bags. I have one that looks about identical to this, that kind of off-white. it's fabric on the outside, kind of a canvas duck fabric, but on the inside of it feels like it's not a heavy plastic lining, but it's plastic-ish lining. I was going to do something like that. I would poke some holes in it so they would drain, but I just think that's a brilliant idea for a vertical space. You may or may not get, you may get 1 or 2 years out of a shoe bag, but they're not very expensive. But I just think it's a very novel idea. But again, that's a lot of space, a lot of plants without a lot of space. The far right one is a strawberry pot that has the different little holes coming out of it. And so it has a whole variety of some succulents growing out of it. But container gardening, you can make anything into a container. If you just go online and you search container gardening, I mean, I've seen photos of grand pianos with the lid up with plants flowing out of them. Obviously, you're not going to play that piano anymore. Dressers where people have pulled out the drawers and planted in them. So if you have old furniture that you wanted to use for that, obviously certainly the tractor or the car tire where you plant inside it. But anything that if you just have a picnic table and want to put some pots on top of it, because that's a height and a width and a size that works for you, then you should do that. I think that's a great idea. So protecting your elbows and shoulders, minimize working with your head above your shoulders, your hands above your shoulders. Do what you can, but you can also do things like long-handled tools. In the picture here, let's see if it works. This is, again, at Franklin Park Conservatory. This was back in 2020. Our Farm Science Review went online, so I went to Franklin Park that day and was taking video and picture of anything I could find. And she has just got this great body. I mean, this great body mechanic. She's got the hat on, the sunglasses, the mask. I'm sure she's wearing sunscreen. She's just relaxed. She's got a good body mechanics in a good position, holding that water wand, and she's just standing at the edge of the bed, and she's getting all into the middle of that bed, and she's just looks comfortable and looks like she could do that all day. It was a very steamy day, as I recall. But I really liked how long that water wand was because she's not reaching her arm out to get it. She's just holding it in the neutral position. She's comfortable. She's wearing some comfortable shoes. It's a good day. So try to limit lifting, reaching, and pulling. And again, use long-handled tools to minimize the need to reach or stoop. So planning for next year. I love perennials. These are actually some of my perennials several years ago. I have some gray hyacinths and some tulips. My daffodils, they look like they're ready to bloom any day now. It's amazing. The ones that get the most sun, the ones that are the farthest to the east in the flower bed, look like they're ready to go. I can't wait. So I like easy to care for plants. Again, raised beds and container gardens, taking advantage of vertical space, use built-in storage, and invite your neighbors and relatives to help in the garden. So that is everything. I have mentioned a couple times our website, AgrAbility, AgrAbility.osu.edu. You go to the resources link that's at the top of the page. That drops down and there's webinars and handouts. And I think I have renumbered it for 2020 to 2022. I need to just get rid of the years dates on that, but we have handouts in there. So I've got handouts for stretching, gardening equipment, outline of this presentation, a lot of other recorded webinars, such as the Fitness for Farm Life, farming with a disability, using universal design with your equipment and your farming. We also have 32 fact sheets under the resources tab, gardening with a physical limitation, secondary injury prevention, heat stress, universal design on the farm, and a lot of other topics. That is all I have.
Awesome, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think my internet issues are fixed now. So I apologize, everybody, for not being able to join you right off the top, but I'm appreciative of my colleague that is very professional, was able to handle that situation. So I really appreciate it, Laura.
So I have a couple of questions in Q&A.
Yeah.
Does the seat on the cart swivel? Yes, it does. It will swivel around. The brand of the garden shoes, they're called Sloggers, Sloggers. I bought mine on Amazon. Link to the handout, the presenter. Can I put it in?
I threw it. I threw it in the chat box a
Oh,
couple
good.
times.
So he's got it in chat. Good.
And I will make sure to link that under the recording of this when we put it up on our website as well, so everyone can check it out.
Oh, good. And then I'm going to give you that question about protecting it from raised bed. I had a rabbit eat my stargazer lilies. I think the first year that I worked here, and I called Dee, my boss. She lives out in the country. I live in the suburbs. And she said, well, you can go out and shoot at them. No, I can't. I really can't. Said, well, tell your husband to go out and pee on him. And I said, again, I have neighbors, Dee. And she said, well, then go get some deer blood, dried deer blood from the nursery. Okay. So I went and got some stink spray to keep the rabbits out. But I thought I was going to lose my mind when it ate my lilies. I was so excited about those things.
It was such a dry year this last year. My garden just got destroyed by deer. That was a nice, well-watered, source of plants for them. So they were eating things that they normally didn't eat. And really, there's not a whole lot you can do for deer besides netting or electric fence that is like, and even then you might need a really tall fence because they'll just hop over it. There's just not a lot to do for deer. We've had this conversation, I think, on one of the past webinars, and someone suggested there's a sprinkler system that's motion activated that'll turn on if a deer comes in the garden and sprays them with water. So
that's awesome.
I'm looking into that one, but you gotta get creative. There's not a lot of good deterrents out there if you're not in an area where you can take them for crop damage, right? But yeah, and I encourage you to look at the chat as well. There was tons of people throwing in.
Looking at where they're from, in Louisiana. Yeah. Somebody's having an ice storm in Iowa. Yikes. Erie, Pennsylvania, quite a few from Erie. Chagrin Falls. My cousins lived in Chagrin Falls. That's very fun. Yeah, boy, we're all over the place.
Yeah, we usually get people from all over.
We survived Mardi Gras. Oh, and a battery-powered garden cart. We did have a battery-powered farm cart that we have at Farm Science Review. That thing is awesome, although it takes off on you. So it's very sensitive when I think you either turn the handle or you squeeze it and it lurches. So you've got to make sure nobody's standing in front of you. But
did you see the question about the name and brand of the green cart with wheels?
Hang on. I actually have some of those handouts in my bag right here. Yeah. I would say I bought one of those carts. We bought it. We had an elderly dog. And so we bought one that had sides that zip down so she could climb right up onto it. And she liked that fairly well. But the green cart, oh, that's the wrong one. If you go to northerntool.com, NORTHERN tool.com, I think they have those there. Do I not? I don't have that card on here. Darn it. I don't remember what the brand is, but if you go to northerntool.com, I feel like they have those carts, the little collapsible ones, but I know you can also, I've seen them certainly online at Amazon, which is where we got ours. But I think I've seen them at Target and Walmart too. They're made out of fabric. It's like suitcase fabric, that kind of vinyl. But I would go and try those out. There's different. I mean, some of them are a little fancier and have handles that will, telescope. Those handles. I can't think what it's called. So basically, they use a bucket with a lid. Saw knife and stabbing motion to battery-powered pruners. That's cool.
And just before everyone hops off, I didn't get to mention at the top, but 2 weeks from now is going to be our final webinar for this year's series, and it's going to be Ecology of Wild Edibles with John Wright Jr. So we're excited to have John, local to Jefferson, present for us. So we're looking forward to that. And as always, all the recordings are available on our website as well. But with that, maybe we'll check out a few more. Is there any more questions in the chat box, Laura?
I don't see.
Lots of people sharing what they like to use and,
Yeah,
and other
I want to see
suggestions.
those.
So you
I gotta find
love
those
to see
battery
it.
powered pruners.
I know a lot of the people in the grape industry use that because that's such a repetitive task, kind of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, where you're doing the same thing over and over again. They develop injuries, and that was a big advancement in technology, is those powered pruners, and I think that's kind of the industry standard these days.
That's awesome. Motion detector sprinkler to keep the deer out of. That's good.
Yeah, someone said it works well. I'm
So
gonna have
if you
to
go
try
into the
it.
if you go to the AgrAbility website, it's under the webinars and tools handout, and then you go in, and I've got it by farming, I've got it by gardening. It's called Garden Tools Handout is what the products are on, and the links, I just checked them a few weeks ago, so they were up to date as of I think last week. Oh, somebody said that BJ's has great folding carts in the past, has had good folding carts. So look at BJ's carts at Sam's Club. There's a Strongway Garden cart under Northern Tool. Yeah. Ryobi makes a lot of these tools. Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, again,